Dennis Wright had been raised in the Catholic Church, surrounded all his life by the traditional symbols that stood for and gave expression to his spiritual needs. Consequently, the transformative experience spoke to him in the kind of symbolic language that he could not only understand but also take to heart. As a student in the middle of his college years, Wright was under heavy parental pressure to abandon his studies in graphic art. His heart's desire had always been to become a professional painter, a vocation at extreme odds with the desires of his father, who had other, more lucrative plans for his son. If he pursued his education, he was sure to be disinherited, which would mean a substantial material loss, though one that was still not as great as losing the emotional support of his family. The only alternative was to comply with his father's wishes and abandon his desired career. Following his bliss could only be purchased with the loss of lifelong security. Moreover, his father had given him an ultimatum, so a decision was expected. Dark night of the soul. To complicate his difficulties, the young man had for the last several months been going through a difficult personal period of the type known in the Catholic Church as the dark night of the soul. This phrase refers to a not uncommon condition of doubt experienced by otherwise devout people who feel their prayers are not being heard. Their faith seems to be melting away, and they find belief in spiritual values increasingly difficult to maintain. Sometimes, they feel shut out by God, with whom they grow angry. It was this spiritual abandonment the student was undergoing when he received his father's last word. While not a particularly religious follower of the Church, the young man had maintained his Catholic faith since childhood, at least until the dark night of the soul came over him. No doubt, the spiritual and paternal crises were reflections of each other, representing both ends of the same psychological dilemma. But now things come to a head, and he found himself suddenly impatient not only with his father but also with God. One seemed very much like a reflection of the other. In an effort to clear his mind, he walked to a nearby park and found a lonely bench, where he tried to sort out his teeming thoughts. The place was virtually abandoned, save for a few small children playing nearby and one or two other solitary figures like himself shuffling in the distance among the trees. Suddenly, all the frustration seething in him over the last several months reached a boiling point. He silently, though passionately, delivered his last prayer, more of an ultimatum to God than a prayer. "Look, I've prayed to you for help with this problem 1,000 times, but you just ignore me. All I'm asking for is guidance, some direction. I want to know which way to go. I've explained my problem to you over and over again until I just don't think you're even around to hear me, or anybody else, for that matter. If I were trying to telephone somebody like you, I would have given up long before today. You're supposed to be omnipotent, but with all your power you can't even stoop to assist just one of your creatures with the crisis of his life. I am this close to chucking any belief in you at all. I'll never bother to call on you again, for anything, because I'm not so sure anymore you even exist. If you do, you're not much help, so I'll rely on myself from now on. I'm beginning to feel ashamed of myself for even thinking you might hear me. Here's the deal, give me tangible, material proof that you really exist, or you'll never hear from me again. Either you show yourself, right now, and materialize here, in front of me, at this moment, or it's quits." Transformational experience of the first order. Precisely at that moment, a little girl in dirty clothes ran up to him, a total stranger, demanding, "Here, mister. Look at this," as she brandished a small plastic crucifix a few inches from his face. He laughed out loud, frightening the child, and she ran away, the cheap crucifix still clutched in her hand. she could have never guessed that her synchronous appearance that spring afternoon had been for him a transformative experience of the first order. In a single moment, his long-lingering dark night of the soul was dispelled and his faith restored. He felt relieved, unburdened of more than a religious crisis. Clarity seemed to filter through his mind like dried-up sponge soaking up clear water. His nerves grew calm. They relaxed in a kind of spiritual certainty he had never known before. He felt a tangible connection leading from the innermost part of himself to something beyond reason. And from his sense of renewal and well-being emerged a determination to follow his heart's desire, to become an artist. But even the shedding of new light on his path through life was entirely secondary to the awe that descended over him. He has been ushered into a veritable holy of holies and experienced a personalized mysticism beyond sharing with anyone else. Something valuable has been added to his life that no one could ever take from him.